The December wind cut through Natalie Carter's thin coat as she stood outside the iron gates in Oak Park. Her fingers trembled, pressing the intercom, not from the 15-degree cold, but from fear that made everything shake. Name. The male voice was flat, impersonal. Natalie Carter, the childcare position. The gates groaned open. The driveway curved through naked trees toward a stone and glass mansion that radiated the kind of money she'd only seen while cleaning other people's houses. Before Leonard decided working made her unavailable. Before he'd convinced her that her place was home, waiting, silent. The man in the doorway was tall, over 6 feet, with an athletic build that suggested discipline. Dark hair cropped, short, gray eyes assessing her like a threat assessment. White shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms corded with muscle. Even relaxed, he radiated controlled power. Mr. Bass? Richard. No smile, no handshake, just a step aside that felt like a test. Come in. The foyer was aggressively warm after the cold. Marble floors, a chandelier worth more than her life, and thick silence. The kind that lived in houses where people stopped talking because words hurt. The agency said you're experienced with special needs children. He closed the door. The lock clicked. She flinched. He noticed. 3 years in early childhood development, Natalie said, forcing her shoulders back. Posture was armor. Before I took time off. They also said you need live-in arrangements, immediately. His eyes never left hers. Why? I'm leaving a difficult situation. I need somewhere safe. Difficult how? Does it matter? Something shifted in his expression. Recognition. He spoke evasion too. My daughter doesn't talk. 2 years of silence. She's 5, smart, healthy, just silent. Natalie's chest tightened. She knew that silence. What happened 2 years ago? Her mother died. 2 words, flat and empty, repeated so many times they'd stopped feeling real. I need someone who won't push her, who won't treat her like she's broken, who'll just be there. Live in, $40,000 annually, meals provided, separate wing. He paused. I can tell you're running from something. If anyone comes asking about you, I need to know immediately. Anyone. Her throat went dry. He knew. Understood. You're safe here. Whatever you're running from doesn't come through those gates. The words ached with fragile hope. Thank you. He led her through rooms that looked like magazine spreads. Leather, dark wood, curated emptiness. No photos, no clutter. Just careful isolation. They stopped outside a closed door. She's drawing, probably. Let her come to you. Don't force anything. The girl sat at a small table by the window, hunched over a sketchbook. Brown curls hid her face. Purple leggings, oversized sweater, rigid, small shoulders. Tension. The posture of someone who'd learned the world wasn't safe. Anne, this is Natalie. She's staying with us. The girl didn't look up, kept drawing with careful, deliberate strokes. Pain flashed through Richard's eyes, quickly buried. I'll show you your room. Natalie stayed in the doorway. Hi, Anne. I like your sweater. Purple's my favorite. Color, too. No response. But the girl's hand paused, just for a second. Her room was larger than her entire studio apartment. White linens, private bathroom, windows overlooking snow-dusted grounds. Beautiful, impersonal, safe. Meals at 7, noon, and 6. Try to have Anne join us at the table, even if she doesn't eat much. Richard stood in the doorway, maintaining distance. If you need anything, ask. At 6, she found Anne still drawing in fading light. It's dinner time. Your dad asked if you'd come eat with us. The girl's hand stilled, looked up, dark eyes full of resignation. A child who'd learned hoping led to disappointment. Natalie knelt down, made herself small. You don't have to talk or eat, but maybe sit with us? Just for a little while? Anne studied her, really looked, then closed her sketchbook and walked past toward the door. Dinner was soup. Richard served Anne carefully, asked about her day, though he expected no answer. She ate mechanically, silently. After 10 minutes, she left without a word. She did well, Natalie said, coming down at all. Progress, bitter. 2 years, and the best we get is 10 minutes. Sometimes 10 minutes is everything. His eyes sharpened. You talk like you know. I do. She didn't elaborate. He didn't ask. That night, Natalie locked her door and checked windows. Second story, locked, no fire escape, force of habit. Leonard's voice. You think you can hide? I'll find you. I always find you. But tonight she slept, warm, on clean sheets, in a house where the man down the hall promised she was safe. She wanted to believe him. She was terrified to try. The first week passed in careful routine. Natalie woke at 6, showered in the marble bathroom that still felt too luxurious to be real, and went to Anne's room. The girl was always awake, always drawing, curled in the window seat like she was guarding something precious. Good morning, Natalie said each day, knowing she'd get no response. But she said it, anyway, because silence only grew when you fed it more silence. By the third day, Anne started glancing up when Natalie entered. By the fifth, she'd left a drawing on Natalie's pillow, a purple flower with roots that went off the page. Natalie taped it to her mirror. Richard watched from a distance, not hovering, just present. At breakfast, he'd sit at the head of the table with his coffee and his phone, reading news or messages, while Anne ate her cereal without looking at him. At dinner, he'd serve food with careful precision and ask questions into the void. School project due this week? Silence. Want to go to the park tomorrow? Silence. I'm here if you need me, sweetheart. Silence. It was the last one that broke Natalie's heart. The way he said it, like a prayer he'd stopped believing would be answered. On Saturday morning, Natalie found Anne in the playroom, surrounded by art supplies, but not using them. Just sitting, staring at the wall where a family photo hung. Richard, younger, smiling. A woman with kind eyes, and Anne's same curls. The girl who didn't exist yet in the photo, just a swell under the woman's dress. Natalie sat on the floor beside her, didn't speak, just pulled out paper and crayons and started drawing. A house, a tree, a sun that was probably too cheerful for the moment, but she drew it anyway. Anne watched. Then, slowly, picked up a purple crayon and added a flower next to Natalie's tree. They drew together for an hour. No words. Just the scratch of wax on paper and the sound of breathing. When Richard found them, he stopped in the doorway. Stared at his daughter. Really looked at her. Like he was seeing something he'd forgotten existed. Hope, maybe. Or just the simple fact that Anne could still connect with someone, even if that someone wasn't him. Lunch is ready, he said quietly. Anne looked at Natalie, a question in her dark eyes. Want to eat together? Natalie asked. You can bring your drawing if you want. The girl gathered her papers carefully, held them against her chest, and followed them downstairs. Progress. 10 minutes at dinner had become an hour in the playroom, had become choosing to follow instead of retreating. Richard made grilled cheese, the kind with 3 types of cheese and butter crisped bread that probably cost more than Natalie's old weekly grocery budget. Anne ate slowly, methodically, but she stayed. She stayed through the whole meal. After lunch, Richard pulled Natalie aside in the kitchen. Whatever you're doing, it's working. I'm not doing anything, just being there. That's more than most people manage. He poured himself coffee, his movements controlled and precise. Everything about him was controlled and precise, like one wrong move would shatter something. The therapist tried techniques, games, bribes. Nothing worked. Maybe she doesn't need techniques. Maybe she just needs time. His jaw tightened. It's been 2 years. Grief doesn't have a timeline. You sound like you know that too. She did. But she wasn't ready to talk about the grief of losing yourself piece by piece, year by year, until you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Until you became so small and quiet, you wondered if you'd ever existed at all. Everyone's lost something, she said instead. Richard's eyes held hers. For a moment she thought he'd push, that he'd ask the questions she could see forming behind his careful expression. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted. His whole body went rigid, alert. I have to go out. Business. I'll be back by dinner. Okay. He hesitated at the door. Lock the gates behind me. Don't answer the door for anyone. I mean it, Natalie. Anyone. Fear spiked through her chest. Is something wrong? No. Just precaution. But the way he said it, the edge in his voice, suggested precaution was a generous word for whatever he was actually feeling. He left. The house fell into a different kind of silence. The kind that felt like waiting. Natalie took Anne outside to the garden. It was dead this time of year, brown stalks and bare soil covered in frost. But Anne walked through it like she was seeing something Natalie couldn't. Touching the frozen earth, tracing the outline of where flowers would bloom. Your mom planted these? Natalie asked softly. Anne nodded. Actually nodded. The first physical acknowledgement of a question in 2 years. Natalie's throat tightened. She had good taste. I bet it's beautiful in spring. The girl looked up at her then. Really looked. And in her dark eyes, Natalie saw the question Anne couldn't ask. Will you still be here in spring? I'm not going anywhere, Natalie said, even though she had no right to promise that. Even though Leonard was out there somewhere, looking. Even though this job was temporary, this safety was borrowed, this family wasn't hers. But Anne needed to hear it, so she said it anyway. They went inside as the sun started setting, made hot chocolate, the real kind, with melted chocolate and milk and marshmallows that Anne carefully arranged in a circle. They sat in the living room, and Natalie read from a picture book while Anne drew. When Richard came home at 6:30, he found them like that. Curled on the couch together, Anne's head against Natalie's shoulder, both of them absorbed in their separate quiet activities, but together in a way that looked almost like peace. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching. Then he cleared his throat, and Natalie looked up. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes looked raw, exposed. Everything okay? She asked. Yeah. His voice was rougher than usual. I'll order dinner. Chinese, okay? Perfect. They ate at the dining table, kung pao chicken and lo mein and fried rice spread across serving dishes. Anne ate with her fingers, picking out the vegetables and leaving the rest, and Richard didn't correct her. Didn't push, just let her be. After dinner, Richard excused himself to his study. Natalie put Anne to bed, tucked her under blankets covered in stars, made sure the nightlight was on, set her favorite stuffed rabbit within reach. Good night, Anne, she whispered. The girl's eyes were already closing, but her small hand reached out and grabbed Natalie's, held on, just for a second, then let go. Natalie's chest ached as she left the room, closed the door, leaned against the wall and breathed through, the sudden overwhelming feeling that she was in way over her head, that she was starting to care about this silent little girl and her broken father in ways that would hurt when she inevitably had to leave. Because she would have to leave. Eventually. When Leonard found her. When Richard realized she brought danger to his doorstep. When this borrowed safety expired. She went to her room, locked the door, and pulled out her phone. No new calls. No messages. Leonard had gone quiet. And that scared her more than the alternative. Quiet meant planning. Quiet meant he was figuring out his next move. She checked the windows again, tested the locks, force of habit. Then climbed into bed and tried to sleep in a house that felt less like a fortress tonight and more like a trap waiting to spring. 3 weeks in, and Natalie had started to believe in the illusion of safety. Anne smiled now. Not often, but enough that when it happened, it felt like witnessing something sacred. She'd started joining them for every meal without being asked. Started bringing her drawings to show Richard, laying them on his desk while he worked, waiting silently for his reaction. And he'd stop whatever he was doing. Didn't matter if he was on the phone, reading contracts, typing emails. He'd stop and study each drawing like it was the most important thing in the world. "This is beautiful, sweetheart," he'd say, every time, even when it was just scribbles. Anne never responded verbally, but her eyes would light up, just a little, before she'd take the drawing and leave. Natalie watched these exchanges from doorways, from hallways, from the margins of their careful dance toward each other. Watched Richard trying so hard to reach his daughter. Watched Anne wanting to reach back, but not knowing how. It reminded her of looking at herself in the mirror during the last year with Leonard, wanting to scream, but having forgotten how to make sound. On a Tuesday morning, she woke to fresh snow. 6 inches had fallen overnight, transforming the grounds into something out of a fairy tale. She found Anne already at her window, nose pressed to the glass, breath fogging the cold surface. "Want to go out?" Natalie asked. Anne turned, eyes wide, nodded enthusiastically. 20 minutes later, they were bundled in coats and boots. Anne's new, expensive, bought by Richard after he'd noticed her old ones had holes. They trudged through untouched snow, Anne's small footprints following Natalie's, larger ones. The girl tilted her head back, caught snowflakes on her tongue, spun in circles with her arms out. She looked like a child. A real child. Not a ghost in a 5-year-old body. Natalie built a snowman, lopsided, with stick arms and rocks for eyes. Anne studied it seriously, then carefully added a purple scarf she'd run inside to get. They stood back and admired their creation like artists at a gallery. "Perfect," Natalie said. Anne reached for her hand, just slipped her small, cold fingers into Natalie's palm and held on while they looked at the snowman together. Natalie's chest felt too full. Too much feeling in too small a space. When they came inside, Richard was in the kitchen making coffee. He looked up, took in their red cheeks and snow-damp hair, and something in his expression softened. "There's a snowman outside," he said. "Anne designed it," Natalie replied. "I just provided manual labor." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I saw the purple scarf. Her mom's favorite color." The words hung in the air, heavy, significant. Anne looked at her father, then slowly, deliberately, walked over and hugged his leg. Just wrapped her small arms around his thigh and held on. Richard froze, completely froze, like movement might shatter the moment. Then, carefully, so carefully it hurt to watch, he put his hand on her curls, stroked once, twice. His eyes closed briefly, and Natalie saw his jaw work like he was trying not to break. "I love you, sweetheart," he whispered. Anne held on tighter. Natalie turned away, giving them privacy, her own eyes burning. She busied herself making hot chocolate, trying to ignore the way her hands trembled slightly. This family was knitting itself back together, and she was somehow part of the thread. But threads could be cut, and she was so afraid of when the scissors would come. That afternoon, while Anne napped, Richard found Natalie in the library. She'd been reading, trying to anyway. Mostly, staring at the same page while her mind wandered through worst-case scenarios. "Can I ask you something?" He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, less guarded than usual. The scene with Anne had stripped away some of his armor. "Of course." "What are you running from?" There it was, the question she'd been expecting since day one. She closed the book, buying time, trying to figure out how much truth to give. "An ex-husband," she said finally. "Leonard. He's a cop, and he doesn't like being told no." Richard's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered through his eyes. "He hurt you." Not a question. A statement. "Yes." "How bad?" She pulled her sleeves down instinctively, covering the faded bruises that had yellowed but not disappeared. "Bad enough that I left with nothing. Bad enough that I'm terrified he'll find me. He won't." "You can't promise that." "Yes, I can." Richard moved further into the room, his voice dropping to something quieter but more intense. "You're under my protection now. That means something in this city." "What does that mean exactly? Your protection?" She needed to know what she'd walked into, who he really was beyond wealthy single father. He studied her for a long moment. "It means I have resources, connections, ways of making sure people who need to disappear stay disappeared, or people who need to stay away understand the consequences of not listening." Her pulse quickened. "You're talking about..." "I'm talking about keeping you safe. However that needs to happen. You don't even know me. I know you make my daughter smile. I know you're the first person in 2 years who's gotten through to her. I know you understand what it's like to survive something that should have broken you." His gray eyes held hers. "That's enough." Natalie's throat tightened. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe this stranger with dangerous connections and careful hands could protect her from a man who'd spent 4 years, convincing her she was nothing without him. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet." He turned to leave, then paused. "Natalie?" "Yes?" "If he shows up, when he shows up, you tell me immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself. Don't try to protect me or Anne from it. You tell me, and I handle it. Understood?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. After he left, she sat in the quiet library and let herself shake. Really shake. The way she only did when she was alone. Because Richard had just made her a promise that sounded like forever. And she'd learned the hard way that forever was just another word for until something better comes along. But Anne had hugged her father today, had held Natalie's hand in the snow, had smiled like the world might be safe again. And Natalie wanted that smile to last, wanted it so badly it scared her. That night at dinner, Anne ate her entire plate, drew a picture of the 3 of them, stick figures, but recognizable. Her, Richard, Natalie, standing in front of a house with a purple door and a snowman in the yard. She slid it across the table to Richard. He picked it up with hands that weren't quite steady. "This is us?" Anne nodded. "It's perfect." His voice was rough. "Can I keep it?" Another nod. He looked at Natalie over Anne's head, and in his eyes she saw the same thing she felt. Hope, terrifying and fragile, that maybe they were building something real here, something worth protecting. She smiled at him. He almost smiled. Back. And outside, snow continued to fall, covering the world in white silence that felt less like isolation tonight, and more like peace. For now, at least. For now. The nightmare came on a Thursday. Natalie woke to small hands shaking her shoulder, urgent and insistent. She jolted upright, heart hammering, instinct screaming danger before her eyes fully opened. But it was just Anne, standing beside the bed in her star-patterned pajamas, face pale in the darkness. The girl's mouth opened and closed, trying to speak. Nothing came out, but her eyes were wide with panic. "What's wrong?" Natalie threw back the covers, already moving. "Are you hurt? Is your dad—" Anne grabbed her hand and pulled, dragging her toward the door with surprising strength for someone so small. They went down the hall, past Anne's room, straight to Richard's closed door. Anne knocked. Pounded, really, with her small fists. The door opened almost immediately. Richard stood there in gray sweatpants and nothing else, hair mussed from sleep, a gun in his right hand that he lowered the second he saw them. His chest was bare, revealing the muscled physique Natalie had only guessed at, along with a scattering of scars across his ribs, old injuries that told stories he'd probably never share. "What happened?" His voice was alert, awake. No grogginess. "I don't know. She came to get me." Anne pushed past both of them into Richard's room, went straight to his bed, and climbed under the covers. Curled into a ball, trembling. Richard and Natalie exchanged glances. Then he set the gun on the dresser, carefully, safety on, and approached the bed slowly. "Bad dream, sweetheart." Anne's curls moved against the pillow. A nod. "Want to talk about it?" Head shake. He looked at Natalie helplessly. This was uncharted territory. Anne seeking comfort, but still unable to voice what she needed. "Can I sit with you?" Natalie asked softly. Anne's hand emerged from the covers, reaching. Natalie climbed onto the bed, and Anne immediately pressed against her side, small body still shaking. Richard stood there for a moment, uncertain, then sat on the edge of the mattress, keeping distance, but present. "It's okay," Natalie murmured, stroking Anne's hair. "Dreams can't hurt you. You're safe here." Safe. The word tasted like a lie in her mouth. But Anne needed to hear it. They sat like that for 20 minutes. Anne's breathing gradually slowed, evened out. Her grip on Natalie's shirt loosened. "She used to have them every night," Richard said quietly, after Claire died. Therapists said it was normal, part of processing trauma. "They stopped?" "Mostly. Every few months she'll have one. But she hasn't come to me for comfort since—" He trailed off. "Since she stopped talking. Since she decided her father couldn't fix what was broken." "She came tonight," Natalie said. "That matters." His eyes met hers in the darkness. "She came to you first. Maybe that's easier. I'm new. I don't have all the history attached. Or maybe you're just better at this than I am." The raw honesty in his voice caught her off guard. This man who commanded respect and fear, who moved through the world with absolute certainty, admitting he didn't know how to comfort his own daughter. "You're doing fine," she said. "You're here. You're trying. That's what counts." Anne had fallen back asleep, her breathing deep and steady. Natalie started to ease away, but the girl's hand tightened on her shirt. "I think you're stuck," Richard said, a hint of something that might have been amusement in his tone. "I don't mind. You can't sleep sitting up all night. I've slept in worse positions." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Richard's expression sharpened. "When you were with him." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "He'd lock me out sometimes, when he was angry. I'd sleep in the building stairwell, or my car, before he took the keys." Richard's jaw clenched so hard she could See the muscle jump. His name. I need his full name. Richard. Leonard what? Carter. Leonard Carter. But you can't. I'm not going to kill him. The way he said it suggested he wanted to. Badly. But I can make sure he understands that coming near you would be the last mistake he makes. He's a cop. He has connections. Friends on the force who'll look the other way. So do I. Different kind of connections, but just as effective. He leaned back against the headboard, careful not to disturb Anne. Tell me about him. Why? Because I need to know what I'm dealing with, and because maybe you need to say it out loud to someone who will believe you. The second part hit harder than the first. Leonard had been so good at making her doubt her own reality, at convincing her that she was dramatic, oversensitive, that his anger was justified because she'd done something wrong. Again. We met 6 years ago, she started, voice low. He was charming, protective, said he'd take care of me. And he did, at first. Paid for everything. Wanted to spend all his time with me. I thought it was romantic, but protective became controlling. So slowly I didn't notice. He didn't like my friends. They were bad influences. Didn't like my job. It took time away from him. Didn't like when I wore certain clothes, talked to certain people, had opinions that didn't match his. She paused, swallowed hard. By the time I realized I was in a cage, I'd forgotten how to fly. Richard said, nothing. Just listened, his expression carved from stone. The first time he hit me was 3 years in. Backhanded me across the face during an argument. Then cried. Apologized. Said he'd never do it again. Her laugh was bitter. He did it again 2 weeks later. And then it wasn't just hands. It was whatever was nearby. And I kept thinking if I just got it right, if I just learned how to not make him angry, it would stop. It never stops, Richard said quietly. Men like that don't stop. Until someone makes them. I know that now. Anne shifted in her sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. They both fell silent, watching her. This innocent child who'd lost her mother, who'd locked herself in silence as protection. She understood about cages, too. What made you finally leave? Richard asked. Natalie's chest tightened. He came home drunk 3 weeks ago, angrier than usual. I don't even remember what set him off. He put his hands around my throat and squeezed until I saw spots. When he let go, he said, "Next time I won't stop." She touched her neck reflexively. The bruises had faded, but she could still feel his fingers. I knew he meant it, so I waited until he passed out, packed one bag, and left. You should have killed him. The words were matter of fact, like he was discussing the weather. I'm not a killer. Neither was I once. He looked at her, and in the dim light his eyes were dark and fathomless. You want to know who I really am? What I do? She did, and she didn't. Knowing meant complicity. Knowing meant she couldn't pretend anymore that this was just a job, just temporary safety. Yes. I run the South Side, protection, gambling, some imports. Nothing involving drugs or trafficking. I have lines I don't cross. But I'm not a good man, Natalie. I've hurt people, killed people who threatened what's mine. He paused. And you're mine now. You and Anne. That's not negotiable anymore. The possessiveness in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it settled something in her chest that had been rattling loose for weeks. I don't know how to be someone's, she admitted. I forgot how. Then we'll figure it out together. Because I don't know how to be someone's either. Not since Claire. They looked at each other across Anne's sleeping form. Two broken people trying to protect a broken child, pretending they knew what they were doing. "Tell me about her," Natalie said. "Your wife." Pain flickered across his face, sharp and immediate. But he answered. "She was good. Actually good. Not just pretending. Volunteered at shelters, donated to causes, saw the best in people even when they didn't deserve it." His voice roughened. "She thought she could fix me, make me legitimate, get me out." "Did she?" "She made me want to try. That was something." He was quiet for a moment. "Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. She died instantly. Driver walked away without a scratch. I'm sorry. He's not walking anymore." The words hung heavy. Natalie didn't ask for clarification. Didn't need to. "Anne was 3, Richard continued. "Old enough to understand Mommy wasn't coming home, but not old enough to process it. She started having nightmares, started clinging to me constantly. Then one day she just stopped talking. Therapist said it was her way of controlling something when everything felt out of control. And you've been trying to reach her ever since. Failing to reach her. You reached her today. She hugged you, Richard. That's not failure." He looked at his daughter, sleeping peacefully now between them. "She trusts you, more than she trusts me. She loves you. There's a difference. Is there? Trust has to be earned every day. Love just exists, even when it's complicated." He absorbed that, nodded slowly. Then, surprising her, he stretched out on the bed properly, still maintaining respectful distance, but settling in. "Stay, please. She'll sleep better if you're here." Natalie should have said no. Should have maintained professional boundaries. Should have remembered this was temporary, that getting attached was dangerous. Instead, she adjusted the pillow and closed her eyes. And for the first time in 6 years, she fell asleep in a room with a man and didn't feel afraid. Leonard Carter found her on a Tuesday afternoon in early January. Natalie was in the kitchen making Anne's favorite snack, apple slices with peanut butter, when the doorbell rang. Sharp, insistent, wrong. Her hand stilled on the knife. Every instinct screamed danger. Richard was out. Business meeting downtown. Anne was upstairs napping. They were alone. The doorbell rang again, 3 times in rapid succession. She moved to the window, careful to stay hidden behind the curtain. And there he was. Leonard, standing at the gate in his police uniform, badge gleaming in the weak winter sunlight. Hands on his belt. Patient. Like he had all the time in the world. Because he did. He always did. Her phone was in her hand before conscious thought. Richard answered on the first ring. "He's here." Her voice came out steady despite the panic clawing up her throat. "Leonard, at the gate." "Don't open it. Don't engage. I'm 15 minutes away." His voice was ice cold, controlled. "Natalie, listen to me. You're safe. He can't get through those gates. I'm coming." The line stayed open. She heard traffic sounds, an engine revving, Richard's breathing. Leonard pressed the intercom button. His voice crackled through the speaker. "I know you're in there, Nat. Just want to talk. 5 minutes. Then I'll leave." He was lying. Leonard never left, not until he got what he wanted. "Is Anne awake?" Richard asked through the phone. "No, still sleeping. Keep her upstairs, away from windows." Leonard tried the intercom again. "Come on, baby. Don't be like this. I've been worried sick. Your sister's worried. Everyone's worried." "My sister stopped worrying about me when I stopped asking for help," Natalie thought bitterly. "I'm not angry," Leonard continued, his tone shifting to that familiar cajoling sweetness he used after the worst nights. "I just want to make sure you're okay. That's all. Just let me see you're okay." Her hands were shaking now. She gripped the counter to steady them. "Natalie." Richard's voice in her ear, grounding her. "Breathe. He can't touch you." But Leonard knew where she was now. Knew she was hiding behind money and gates that wouldn't stop a cop with the right connections. He'd come back. And next time, Richard might not be 15 minutes away. Anne appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. She looked at Natalie, then at the intercom where Leonard's voice was still crackling through, and her small body went rigid. She'd seen him before. That day, 3 weeks ago, when he'd shown up, when she'd witnessed Natalie's terror. The day she'd broken 2 years of silence. Now Anne's eyes went wide, dark with fear, and Natalie watched the girl's mouth open. Close. Open again. "Natalie, I can get a warrant," Leonard said, patience evaporating. "Welfare check. Judge owes me a favor. I can be inside that house in 2 hours, and then we're having this conversation whether you like it or not." "He's bluffing," Richard said in her ear. "He has no legal grounds. He's trying to scare you." It was working. Anne walked forward slowly, came to stand beside Natalie, looked up at her with those serious dark eyes, then did something that shattered Natalie's heart into pieces. She tugged on Natalie's sleeve and spoke. "Daddy." The word was small, rusty, like vocal cords remembering how to work. "Call Daddy." Natalie's breath caught. She dropped to her knees, eye level with this beautiful, brave child who'd just given up 2 years of protective silence to help her. "He's on the phone, sweetheart," Natalie whispered, showing her the screen. "He's coming home." Anne took the phone with both hands, held it close. "Daddy, come home. The bad man is here." Through the speaker, Natalie heard Richard's sharp intake of breath, then his voice, thick with emotion but steady. "I'm almost there, baby girl. You and Natalie go upstairs to your room and lock the door. Can you do that for me?" "Yes." Anne's voice was gaining strength, like each word was easier than the last. "Hurry, Daddy." "I'm hurrying. I love you, Anne, so much." "Love you too." Natalie's vision blurred. 2 years. 2 years of silence, and this child was speaking because she thought Natalie needed protection. Leonard was still talking at the intercom. "Look, I don't know who owns this place, but they're harboring my wife. That's a crime. Tell them Leonard Carter, Chicago PD, needs to speak with—" The rest of his words were cut off by the sound of tires on gravel. A black SUV came up the drive fast, skidding slightly on the ice before stopping between Leonard and the house. Richard got out. He'd been wearing a suit earlier. He was still wearing the pants and white shirt, but his jacket was gone, sleeves rolled up, and there was something in his posture that made him look bigger. Dangerous. Not businessman. Not father. Predator. Natalie watched through the window as Richard approached Leonard. They were too far away for her to hear the conversation, but she could see Leonard's body language change. Defensive, then aggressive, hand moving toward his weapon. Richard didn't flinch, just spoke, close and quiet, and whatever he said made Leonard go pale. The confrontation lasted less than 3 minutes. Then Leonard was backing toward his car, hands up in a placating gesture, still talking, but clearly retreating. He got in, started the engine, and drove away. Richard stood in the driveway, watching until the car disappeared. Then he turned toward the house, and his expression shifted from cold menace to something raw and desperate. He was inside before Natalie could process. Took the stairs 2 at a time. Found them in Anne's room where they'd retreated after the phone call. Anne ran to him. Actually ran, throwing herself at her father with none of her usual hesitation. "Daddy!" He caught her, lifted her, buried his face in her curls. His shoulders shook once, twice, before he got himself under control. "You spoke. Baby, you spoke." The The bad man scared Natalie. I had to tell you. Richard's eyes met Natalie's over Anne's head. In them was grief and joy and rage all tangled together. You were so brave, he told his daughter. So brave. I'm so proud of you. Anne pulled back to look at him. Is he gone? He's gone. He won't come back. Promise? I promise. He set her down gently, then moved to Natalie. Are you okay? She nodded, not trusting her voice. He won't be back, Richard repeated, this time to her. I made sure he understands what happens if he comes near you again. What did you say to him? That you're under my protection, that this city has two kinds of law, the kind written in books and the kind written in blood, and that he just crossed a line into the second kind. His hand came up, cupped her face with surprising gentleness. You're safe, Natalie. I swear to you. She wanted to believe him. But Leonard didn't scare easily. Leonard had connections, resources, institutional power that Richard's criminal empire couldn't touch. He'll find another way. Then I'll handle it another way. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. However many times it takes. Anne tugged on both their hands. Can we have dinner now? I'm hungry. The mundane request after the emotional intensity made Natalie laugh, a shaky, slightly hysterical sound, but real. Yeah, sweetheart, let's make dinner. That night, Anne talked through the entire meal. Not constantly, and sometimes the words came slowly, carefully, like she was testing each one. But she talked, asked questions, told them about her dreams, about what she wanted to draw tomorrow, about whether they could make cookies this weekend. Richard listened like every word was precious, like he was memorizing them. After dinner, after Anne was tucked in bed, Richard found Natalie in her room. She was sitting on the floor with her back against the bed, arms wrapped around her knees, trying to process the fact that Leonard knew where she was. He can't hurt you here. Richard sat beside her, close but not touching. He's a cop, Richard. He has the entire Chicago PD behind him. He's one cop, and most of the department knows he's dirty. They just look the other way because he's useful. But he's not untouchable. Richard was quiet a moment. I had someone pull his file. He's got 3 excessive force complaints, 2 dismissed, 1 pending. Pattern of behavior. He's a ticking time bomb, Natalie. One more incident and his career is over. So what are you saying? I'm saying I have insurance, documentation, witnesses who'll testify about what he's done to you and others. If he comes near you again, I destroy him. Publicly. Completely. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to fall. Why are you doing this? She asked. You barely know me. I know enough. And Anne spoke today because she was afraid for you. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. He turned to face her fully. You're part of this family now. That means you're worth protecting. Always. Family. The word settled in her chest, heavy and warm and terrifying. I don't know how to be part of a family anymore, she admitted. Neither do I. But Anne's talking again, and that's a start. They sat in silence, shoulders touching, while outside the winter wind howled against the windows. And Natalie let herself hope, just a little, that maybe Richard was right. Maybe Leonard was gone. Maybe she really was safe. Maybe this borrowed life could become real. Leonard came back 3 days later. Not to the house. He was smarter than that. He waited until Natalie left the estate, the first time in a month she'd gone anywhere, to pick up art supplies Anne had requested from a specialty store downtown. Richard had offered to send someone, but Natalie was tired of being afraid, tired of hiding. 1 hour in public, in broad daylight, shouldn't feel like a death sentence. She was wrong. She saw him the moment she exited the store, bags in hand. He was leaning against a patrol car across the street, arms crossed, watching, waiting. The uniform gave him authority. The badge made him untouchable. And his smile, that cold, satisfied smile, said he knew exactly how trapped she was. Her phone was in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Leonard pushed off the car, started crossing the street. Not fast, taking his time. She dialed Richard. He answered immediately. He's here, downtown, outside Preston Art Supply. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Get back inside the store. Stay where there are people. I'm 10 minutes out. But Leonard was already on the sidewalk, 5 feet away, then 3. Hey, baby. His voice was conversational, friendly, like they were old lovers running into each other by chance. Been a while. Stay away from me. She backed toward the store entrance. Or what? You'll call your boyfriend? He glanced at the phone in her hand, still connected to Richard. Oh, you already did. That's cute. He raised his voice. You hear me, Bass? Your little whore and I are just having a conversation. Nothing illegal about talking to, my wife. Ex-wife, Natalie said. The papers are filed. Papers I didn't sign, which means you're still mine. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. The same one he'd worn the night he'd strangled her. You embarrassed me, Nat. Made me look weak. Running off, hiding behind some criminal's money like a coward. I'm not going back. You don't have a choice. His hand shot out, grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise where people could see, but firm enough to hurt. We're going to walk to my car. You're going to get in. And we're going to go home and work this out like adults. Let go of me. She tried to pull away. His grip tightened. Sir, is there a problem here? A security guard from the store had stepped outside, eyeing them with concern. Leonard flashed his badge. Officer Carter, Chicago PD. Just talking to my wife. The guard hesitated. Badge versus distressed woman. Authority usually won. I don't want to go with him, Natalie said loudly, clearly. He's hurting me. She's confused, Leonard said smoothly. Had a breakdown last month. I've been looking for her. Family emergency. The guard looked between them, uncertain. Then a black SUV screeched to a stop at the curb. Richard got out, and even in daylight, in public, he radiated dangerous intent. 2 other men emerged from the vehicle behind him, large, intimidating, clearly not law-abiding citizens. Leonard's face hardened. This is police business, Bass. Walk away. That's not police business. That's assault. Richard's voice was deadly calm. You're hurting her. Let her go. Or what? You'll have your thugs rough up a cop in broad daylight? Leonard's grip on Natalie's wrist tightened. There are cameras everywhere. Witnesses. You touch me, and you're done. Richard smiled. It was terrifying. I don't need to touch you. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, held it up. Video started playing. Leonard in a bar, clearly drunk, harassing a waitress. Grabbing. Her pushing him away. Him shoving her hard enough that she fell. That's from 6 months ago, Richard said. I have 4 more videos like it, and statements from 3 women willing to testify about your behavior. Your captain receives all of it if you don't let her go right now. Leonard's face went white, then red. You're bluffing. Try me. The standoff lasted 5 seconds that felt like 5 hours. Then Leonard released Natalie's wrist, hands up in surrender. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Richard stepped closer, voice dropping so only Leonard could hear. but Natalie was close enough to catch it. You come near her again, and the videos go to your captain, the media, and every lawyer in the city willing to take police brutality cases. Your career ends. Your pension disappears. And then, only then, do I let my people handle what's left of you. Leonard's jaw worked. Hatred poured off him in waves. But he was beaten, and he knew it. He got in his patrol car and drove away. Natalie's legs gave out. Richard caught her before she hit the pavement, wrapped his arms around her, held her steady while she shook. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair. "You're okay. I've got you." He touched me, he grabbed me, and I couldn't... I know, but he's gone now, and he's not coming back. She wanted to believe him, but Leonard's last words echoed. This isn't over. Richard drove her home, one hand on the wheel, the other holding hers. Anne was waiting at the door, face pressed to the window. When they came inside, she ran straight to Natalie. "Are you okay? Did the bad man hurt you?" "I'm okay, sweetheart." Natalie knelt down, let Anne inspect her for injuries with serious, worried eyes. "Your dad protected me." Anne turned to Richard. "You made him go away." "I did." "Forever?" Richard hesitated. Natalie saw him weighing honesty against comfort. "He chose honesty." "I hope so. But if he comes back, I'll handle it again. I promise." That night, Anne insisted. Natalie read 3 extra bedtime stories. And when Natalie tried to leave, Anne grabbed her hand. "Stay, please." So Natalie stayed, sat in the chair beside Anne's bed until the girl fell asleep, small hand still holding hers. Richard found her there an hour later. "She okay?" "Worried. About me." "She's not the only one." He sat on the floor beside the chair, back against the wall, exhausted. "I should have anticipated he'd pull something like that. Should have had someone with you." "I can't live in a cage, Richard. Even a gilded one." "I know. But I also can't." He stopped, jaw clenching. "When I got that call, when I heard his voice on your phone, I wanted to kill him, Natalie. Not strategically, not carefully, just wanted him dead. But you didn't. Because Anne needs her father. And you need someone who can protect you without becoming the same kind of monster you're running from." The words hung in the darkness, true and raw and complicated. "You're not a monster," Natalie said, quietly. "I've done monstrous things. So have a lot of people. That doesn't define who you are now." He looked up at her, and in the dim glow from Anne's nightlight, his expression was vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "Who am I now?" "A father. A protector. Someone trying to be better than he was. Is that enough? For Anne? For me?" She reached down, brushed her fingers through his hair. The gesture was intimate, instinctive. "It's everything." His hand came up, covered hers, held it against his head for a long moment. Neither of them spoke. Then Anne stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about purple flowers, and they both smiled. "I should go," Natalie whispered. "Stay." His eyes met hers. "Here, with us, not just tonight. Stay." "Richard, I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. But Anne loves you. And I..." He swallowed hard. "I can't imagine this house without you in it anymore." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I'm still married, legally. The papers will go through. I'll make sure of it. Leonard won't give up. Then I'll keep fighting him, however long it takes. Why? Because you're worth fighting for. Because Anne deserves to keep smiling. Because I haven't felt this alive since Claire died, and I'm not ready to go back to just existing." Natalie's throat tightened. She looked at Anne, sleeping peacefully. looked at Richard on the floor beside her, offering something she'd thought she'd never have again. Safety. Home. Family. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." His expression cracked. Relief and joy, and something deeper flooding through. He stood, pulled her to her feet, and for a moment just held her. Close. Careful. Like she was something precious he was afraid of breaking. "Thank you," he said against her hair. They stood there in Anne's room, holding each other, while the little girl who'd brought them together slept on, dreaming of gardens and purple flowers, and a world where bad men couldn't win. Outside, the city hummed, with life and danger and possibility. But inside these walls, for tonight at least, they were safe. Together. And that was enough. Leonard Carter's body was found in his apartment 2 weeks later. Official cause of death: suicide. Single gunshot wound to the head. His service weapon. No signs of forced entry. No signs of struggle. The investigation was perfunctory. A cop struggling with depression, recent marital problems, performance issues at work. The narrative wrote itself. Natalie heard the news on the morning broadcast while making Anne's breakfast. She stood frozen at the counter, spatula in hand, watching footage of police tape and covered windows. Richard came up behind her, turned off the television. "Did you—" she started. "No." His voice was firm, clear. "I didn't touch him. Didn't have anyone else touch him either." "Then how—" "I sent evidence of his abuse to Internal Affairs. Body camera footage from other officers showing his violence. Statements from women he'd harmed. His captain called him in yesterday for questioning, told him he was done. Criminal charges pending, pension gone, likely prison time." Richard's hand settled on her shoulder. He saw the end coming and chose his own exit. Natalie should have felt something. Relief, maybe. Vindication. Instead, she just felt hollow. "I wanted him to face consequences. Not this." He did face them. Just not the kind imposed by a court. Anne appeared in the doorway, already dressed in purple leggings and a sweater. "Is breakfast ready?" Natalie turned off the stove, forced a smile. "Almost, sweetheart." The girl studied her with those two perceptive dark eyes. "Are you sad?" "A little." "Why?" "How did you explain to a 5-year-old that someone who'd hurt you was dead, and that death felt complicated instead of simple?" "Someone I used to know died," Natalie said carefully. "It's okay to feel sad when people die, even if they weren't good to us." Anne considered this, then walked over and hugged Natalie's waist. "Mommy used to say everyone deserves kindness, even mean people, because they're probably sad inside." Natalie's throat tightened. She looked at Richard over Anne's head. "Your mother was wise," Richard said quietly, "and very kind. I miss her." Anne's voice was small. "But I'm glad Natalie's here now. Is that bad?" "No, sweetheart." Richard knelt down to Anne's level. "Loving someone new doesn't mean you stop loving someone you lost. Your heart just makes more room." Anne thought about this, nodded, then surprised them both by taking Richard's hand and Natalie's hand and joining them together. "Family," she announced. "We're family now." Richard's fingers curled around Natalie's, warm, strong, sure. "Yeah," he said, voice rough. "We are." 3 months later, spring arrived in Chicago with sudden violence. One day snow, the next day 60 degrees and sunshine that felt like a promise. Anne dragged them both outside to the garden. The dead stalks from winter were gone, replaced by green shoots pushing through dark soil. Crocuses bloomed in purple clusters. Daffodils nodded in the breeze. "Mommy's flowers," Anne said, touching a purple bloom gently. They came back. They always come back, Natalie said. That's what perennials do. They just need time. Richard watched his daughter explore the garden, and something in his expression had softened over the past months. The hard edges were still there, would always be there. But around them was something gentler, something that looked like peace. I want to plant something, Anne announced. Something new, can we? What do you want to plant? Natalie asked. Anne thought hard, brow furrowed. Sunflowers, really tall ones, so we can see them from my window. Then sunflowers it is. They spent the afternoon digging holes, planting seeds, getting dirt under their fingernails. Anne narrated the entire process, her voice bright and clear, and so different from the silent child Natalie had met 4 months ago. When they finished, Anne insisted on marking each planted spot with a rock she'd decorated with purple paint. So we remember where they are, she explained seriously. When they grow big. That evening, after Anne was in bed, Richard found Natalie in the library. She was reading. Actually reading this time, not just staring at pages while her mind wandered through worst-case scenarios. The adoption papers came through, he said without preamble. Natalie looked up. Anne's. Yours. He sat beside her on the couch. Legal name change if you want it. Natalie Bass instead of Natalie Carter, and formal adoption into the family trust. Everything I have becomes yours and Anne's if something happens to me. Richard, I can't. You can. You should. His hand found hers. You're not temporary, Natalie. You stopped being temporary the moment Anne spoke for the first time to protect you. This is real. We're real. And I want it legal. Official. Permanent. Her heart hammered. That's a lot of trust for someone you've known 4 months. I've known you long enough. Known you're the first person besides me who Anne let in. Known you're brave enough to run from a monster and strong enough to survive him. Known you make coffee too weak and read the same page 3 times when you're anxious and cry during animated movies. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I know you, Natalie, and I want you to stay, not as an employee, not as a guest, as family. What? About Claire? The question hung between them. The ghost of his wife, still present in the garden and the photos and Anne's memories. Claire would have liked you, Richard said after a moment. She would have seen what I see, that you're exactly what Anne needed. What I needed. He paused. I'll always love her, but she's gone, and you're here. And I'd like to stop living in the past if you're willing to try the future with me. Natalie looked at this man who'd saved her, who'd protected her, who'd somehow become home in the space of a few months. I'm willing, she whispered. He smiled, a real smile, rare and beautiful. Then leaned in and kissed her, soft, careful, full of promise. When they pulled apart, Anne was standing in the doorway in her pajamas, grinning. I knew it, she said smugly. You love each other. Shouldn't you be asleep? Richard asked, but there was no heat in it. Couldn't sleep. Too excited about the sunflowers. She padded over and climbed between them on the couch. Are you going to get married like in the movies? Richard and Natalie exchanged glances. Maybe, Natalie said. Someday, if your dad asks nicely. I can ask right now, Richard said, and there was mischief in his eyes, an expression Natalie had never seen before. Richard, Natalie Carter, will you marry me? You don't even have a ring. Don't need one. Just need an answer. Anne bounced excitedly. Say yes. Say yes. Natalie looked at this little girl who'd broken 2 years of silence to save her. Looked at this dangerous man who'd learned gentleness from his daughter and offered protection without possession. Looked at this life she'd stumbled into while running from another one. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll marry you. Anne cheered. Richard kissed her again. And somewhere in Natalie's chest, something that had been broken for a very long time clicked back into place. Not fixed, not perfect, but healing. 6 months after that, they stood in the garden surrounded by sunflowers taller than Anne. The ceremony was small, just them, the officiant, and a few of Richard's most trusted people. Anne was flower girl, scattering purple petals with solemn importance. Natalie wore a simple white dress. Richard wore a black suit. They spoke vows they'd written themselves, promises about choosing each other every day, about building something new from broken pieces, about being brave enough to try again. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Anne made a "Kone," disgusted face that had everyone laughing. The reception was dinner in the mansion's dining room, the same room where Natalie had first coaxed Anne to the table 6 months ago, where they'd become a family one meal at a time. After dinner, Anne presented them with a drawing, the three of them standing in front of the house, surrounded by purple flowers and impossibly tall sunflowers. At the bottom, in careful letters, she'd written, "My family." Richard framed it that night, hung it in his study, where the photo of Claire used to be. Not erasing her picture had moved to Anne's room, where it belonged, but making space for what was now. That night, after Anne was asleep, Richard and Natalie stood in the garden under stars. The summer air was warm, full of the scent of flowers and earth and growing things. "Thank you," Richard said. "For what?" "For knocking on my door, for staying, for teaching me that some things are worth more than control." He pulled her close. "For giving me back my daughter's voice." She gave herself that. "I just helped." "You did more than help. You saved us both." Natalie thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago. Terrified, running, convinced she'd never be safe again. That version of herself felt like a stranger now. "We saved each other," she said. He kissed her temple. "Fair enough." They stood there in comfortable silence, two broken people who'd learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is let someone in. And sometimes the bravest thing is to stay. Sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expected. Sometimes they're the ones the world told us to fear. And sometimes survival isn't about running until you can't run anymore. It's about finding someone who'll stand between you and the monsters. Someone who'll protect you not because you're weak, but because you're worth protecting. Natalie thought love meant sacrifice. Richard thought strength meant isolation. Anne thought safety meant silence. They were all wrong. Love is choosing someone every day, even when it's hard. Strength is admitting you need help. And safety is knowing you can use your voice without punishment. Maybe that's what all of us are searching for. Not perfection. Just someone willing to fight for us when we're too tired to fight for ourselves. Someone who sees our broken pieces and doesn't run. Someone brave enough to say, "You're mine now," and that means something. Because at the end of the day, we're all just looking for home. And sometimes home isn't a place. It's a person who makes space for you in their life and calls it family.